The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched beyond human vision. Thousands of alien delegates filled the curved seats that rose like waves toward the distant ceiling. Ambassador Lee Tae-min walked slowly down the central path, his footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. For 23 years, Lee had served humanity in these halls. He had negotiated trade agreements with the crystal beings of Valthar. He had shared scientific discoveries with the tentacled Nixari scholars. He had even laughed with Corvani warriors over stories of their homeworlds. Today, all those faces watched him with cold eyes. The council speaker, a tall Valthari with skin like flowing mercury, raised one elongated arm. Ambassador Lee Tae-min of Earth. The translator made its voice sound almost sad. You stand before this council to hear our final judgment on your species. Lee stopped at the speaking platform. His hands were steady, but his heart hammered against his ribs. Around him, holographic displays showed human colonies scattered across 47 worlds. New Sol on Kepler 442b. New Busan orbiting the gas giant Prometheus. The mining stations of the asteroid belt around Wolf 359. All of them filled with families, children, dreamers who had left Earth to build something beautiful among the stars. We have served this council faithfully, Lee said, his voice carrying clearly through the vast space. Humanity has contributed to galactic science, trade, and peace for over 2 decades. We have honored every treaty and agreement. The Nexari, Prime Scholar, her purple tentacles writhing slowly, leaned forward. Yes, Ambassador, and that is precisely the problem. Lee felt the blood drain from his face. I do not understand. Your species adapts too quickly, the scholar continued. In 23 years, you have advanced from barely achieving faster-than-light travel to matching technologies we developed over millennia. Your genetic diversity allows you to survive on worlds that would kill any of our peoples. Your reproduction rate exceeds safe parameters. Most concerning of all, your military innovations show a level of creativity that threatens galactic stability. A Corvani general stood, his forearms crossed over his chitinous chest. 3 months ago, your colonel, Park Jiho, demonstrated a new shield frequency that rendered our weapons completely ineffective. When asked to share this technology, your government refused, claiming it was classified for defensive purposes only. Because it was, Lee protested. We would never use our technology to harm our allies. But you could, the council speaker said softly. That is the issue, Ambassador. We have run the calculations. Within 50 years, possibly less, humanity will possess the capability to destroy any of our civilizations single-handedly. Within a century, you could dominate the entire galaxy. Lee stared at them in shock. We came to you in friendship. We sought only to learn, to grow, to be part of something greater than ourselves. And in doing so, you have become something we cannot control, the Valthari speaker replied. The council has reached a unanimous decision. Humanity is classified as a containment-level Omega threat. Immediate action is required. The words hit Lee like a physical blow. He had heard whispers of containment-level Omega. It was reserved for species that posed existential threats to galactic civilization. Species that had to be stopped by any means necessary. You cannot be serious, Lee whispered. The great displays around the hall suddenly changed. Instead of peaceful colony worlds, they showed massive fleets moving through hyperspace. Valthari dreadnoughts, their hulls gleaming like liquid metal. Nexari bioships, grown rather than built, pulsing with organic weapons. Corvani war cruisers, bristling with enough firepower to crack planets, all of them heading toward human space. The operation began 6 hours ago, the council speaker announced. By the time this session concludes, all human military installations and colonial infrastructure will be eliminated. Earth itself will be subjected to orbital bombardment sufficient to reduce your industrial capacity to pre-spaceflight levels. The blockade will ensure you never again threaten galactic peace. Lee's legs nearly gave out. 47 worlds, millions of people. Please, he begged, falling to his knees. Many of those colonies have children, families who have never even seen a weapon. They are scientists, farmers, teachers. They are potential soldiers, the Corvani general replied coldly. We have studied your history, Ambassador. Your species has an unfortunate tendency to turn any tool into a weapon, any knowledge into a means of warfare. We cannot take the risk. The displays showed the first attacks beginning. New Sol's orbital platforms exploded in silent flowers of light. The mining stations around Wolf 359 simply vanished under concentrated fire. Colony after colony went dark as the combined fleets of humanity's former allies systematically destroyed everything humans had built among the stars. Lee watched Captain Kim Sora's evacuation fleet, trying desperately to save civilians from New Busan. Her ships were fast, designed for exploration rather than war. They had no chance against the alien war fleets. One by one, the evacuation vessels were targeted and destroyed. Sora's final transmission reached Earth just moments before her ship's destruction. Tell them we trusted until the end. The slaughter continued for hours. Lee remained on his knees in the council chamber, forced to watch as humanity's dreams burned in the void. The aliens did not speak. They simply observed, clinical and cold, as if watching a medical procedure. When the last human outpost fell silent, the council speaker addressed Lee one final time. Your species will be permitted to survive on Earth under permanent quarantine. Any attempt to develop spaceflight capability again will result in complete extermination. You have 48 hours to return to your homeworld before the blockade becomes absolute. Lee rose slowly to his feet. His face was streaked with tears, but his eyes held something that made several alien delegates shift uncomfortably in their seats. You have made a grave mistake, he said quietly. Have we? The Nexari scholar asked. Your fleets are destroyed. Your colonies eliminated. Your infrastructure in ruins. What possible threat could you represent now? Lee looked around the chamber one last time, memorizing the faces of every species that had participated in humanity's betrayal. You assume that because you have hurt us, you have broken us. You assume that because you have made us bleed, we will submit. You clearly do not understand what you have just unleashed. He turned and walked toward the exit, his footsteps echoing. In the silence. At the great doors, he paused and looked back. We came to you with open hearts and empty hands, seeking friendship among the stars. You have taught us that trust is weakness, that mercy is folly, that the universe is a place where only the strong survive. Thank you for the lesson. I promise you, we will not forget it. As the doors closed behind him, none of the alien delegates noticed the strange expression on Ambassador Lee's face. It was not defeat or despair. It was something far more dangerous. It was the look of a student who had just learned something very important indeed. The morning sun cast long shadows across the ruins of what had once been Seoul Spaceport. Weeds grew through the cracked landing pads, where humanity's first interstellar ships had once launched toward distant stars. 50 years had passed since the betrayal, and Earth bore its scars like an old warrior who had survived too many battles. Choi Min-ho kicked a piece of twisted metal as he walked through the abandoned complex. At 25, he had never seen a working spaceship except in the hidden archives his grandmother kept. Like all children born after the betrayal, he had grown up with stories of the time when humans walked among alien friends, when the galaxy seemed full of promise and wonder. Tell me again about Captain Kim Sora, he said to the elderly woman walking beside him. His grandmother, Dr. Yoon Hye-jin, paused at a memorial wall covered with names, thousands of them, representing every human who had died in the colonies. She was brave, Hye-jin said softly. They all were. They trusted until the very end, even as the alien fleets destroyed their ships. Min-ho had heard this story countless times, but he never tired of it. His grandmother had been one of the few witnesses to survive the orbital bombardment of Earth. She had watched from an underground bunker as alien weapons turned the planet's major cities into glass and ash. The attackers had been careful, surgical, in their destruction. They wanted Earth crippled, not dead. A planet full of corpses could not serve as a warning to other species who might grow too powerful too quickly. But we survived, Min-ho said. More statement than question. We survived, Hyejin confirmed, though they probably wished we had not. Above them, a shadow passed across the sun. Minho looked up to see one of the alien patrol ships making its monthly sweep of Earth's atmosphere. The vessel was sleek and silver, a Valthari design that moved through the sky like liquid mercury. It had been scanning Earth for 50 years, watching for any sign that humanity might be trying to rebuild their spacefaring capability. The ship's sensors would find nothing suspicious. The underground facilities were too deep and too well hidden. The work that humanity had been doing in the darkness was invisible to alien technology because it followed principles the aliens had never discovered. After the patrol ship disappeared, beyond the horizon, Hyejin led Minho toward a hidden entrance beneath the memorial. The passage was narrow and led deep underground, past multiple checkpoints and scanning stations. Guards nodded respectfully to Hyejin as they passed. Even after 50 years, she was remembered as one of the architects of humanity's survival. The elevator dropped for what felt like forever, before finally opening into a vast underground complex. The ceiling stretched high above, supported by pillars that hummed with barely contained energy. Thousands of people worked at stations that glowed with soft blue light. The air buzzed with quiet conversation in a dozen different languages as humans from every surviving nation contributed to the project that had consumed half a century. "Welcome to New Horizon," Hyejin said quietly. Minho stared in amazement. He had known about the underground cities, of course. Everyone did. But he had never imagined anything like this. The facility stretched beyond sight in every direction, filled with equipment that seemed to bend light around itself, and workstations where technicians manipulated displays that showed impossible geometric shapes. "What is this place?" he whispered. "This is where we learn to stop being human," a new voice said. Minho turned to see a woman approaching them. She was tall and severe, with gray streaks in her black hair and eyes that seemed to have seen too much. Her uniform bore no rank insignia, but everyone they passed straightened slightly in her presence. "General An Mi-kyung," Hyejin said by way of introduction. "She runs this facility." General An studied Minho with those unsettling eyes. "Dr. Yoon says you have potential. She says you understand what was taken from us." "My family died on New Seoul," Minho replied. "My parents, my sister, my cousins. All of them." "Good," An said coldly. "Anger is useful. But anger alone is not enough. Come, let me show you what 50 years of anger can accomplish." She led them deeper into the complex, past laboratories where scientists worked with materials that seemed to exist partially outside normal space. In one room, Minho saw engineers testing devices that made the air itself ripple like water. In another, pilots practiced flying ships that flickered in and out of existence. "The aliens thought they understood us," General An explained as they walked. "They saw our technology, our weapons, our ships. They calculated our capabilities, based on what they could observe. They made plans based on their understanding of physics and warfare. They stopped before a massive window that looked out into a chamber filled with absolute darkness. At first, Minho thought it was empty. Then he realized the darkness was moving, flowing like a living thing. "They were wrong," An continued. "What they saw was what we chose to show them, what we were when we believed in friendship and cooperation. They never saw what we could become when we stopped caring about such things." A figure materialized from the darkness beyond the window. It looked human, but moved in ways that human bodies should not be able to move. The person phase shifted through solid matter, flickered between dimensions and manipulated space-time with casual gestures. "Engineer Kwon Dong-wook," General An said. "He volunteers for our more experimental procedures. The aliens destroyed our colonies because they feared what humans might become. They have no idea what we actually became while they were congratulating themselves on containing us." Minho watched in fascination as Kwon demonstrated abilities that defied everything he thought he knew about reality. "How?" "Pain is an excellent teacher," Dr. Yoon said sadly. "When the aliens betrayed us, they took away more than our colonies. They took away our faith in the universe as a place where good intentions matter. They taught us that survival requires becoming something other people cannot understand or predict. General An led them to another section where younger people trained in chambers that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Minho recognized some faces from his neighborhood. Bei Sujin, the quiet girl who lived near the old library. Park Hyunwoo, who had always been good at mathematics. They moved through impossible geometries with the casual ease of fish swimming through water. We call them the Void Children, An explained. Born after the betrayal, raised in facilities like this one. They have never known a universe where humans were trusted or welcomed. They have no emotional attachment to concepts like mercy or fairness. They are what 50 years of careful engineering has produced. Minho felt a chill run down his spine as he watched his former neighbors practice techniques that would have been considered magic by earlier generations. What are you planning? General An smiled, and the expression made Minho's blood turn cold. Planning? We finished planning decades ago. What you see here is preparation. The aliens believe they solved their human problem 50 years ago. Soon, they will learn how wrong they were. As they walked back toward the surface, Dr. Yoon placed a gentle hand on her grandson's shoulder. The universe taught us that kindness is weakness, that trust leads to betrayal, that mercy is a luxury we cannot afford. We have been excellent students. Above them, another alien patrol ship passed overhead, its sensors detecting nothing but the radiation signature of a barely civilized world struggling to rebuild after devastating bombardment. The aliens had been conducting these patrols for 50 years without incident. They had grown comfortable, predictable in their routes and timing. That comfort would soon prove to be a fatal mistake. In the depths of New Horizon and 100 other facilities just like it, humanity had spent 5 decades becoming something the galaxy had never encountered. They had transformed themselves into weapons of vengeance wrapped in flesh that could phase through dimensions like ghosts, seeking retribution. The children of Earth were almost ready to remind the galaxy why their species should never have been betrayed. Soon, very soon, the aliens would learn that there are fates far worse than death, and that humanity had become experts at delivering them. Children of the void deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, Admiral Shin Woo-jin stood before a viewport that looked out into the crushing darkness of the deep. Schools of bizarre fish swam past, their bioluminescent bodies casting strange patterns on the reinforced glass. But Woo-jin was not watching the fish. Her attention was focused on the massive construction taking place in the oceanic trench below. The shipyard stretched for kilometers across the ocean floor, hidden from alien satellites by 3 miles of water and sophisticated camouflage systems. Hundreds of vessels took shape in the darkness, but they bore no resemblance to the ships humanity had once built. These craft seemed to exist partially outside normal space, their hulls rippling with energies that bent light around their edges. Status report, Woo-jin commanded. Captain Oh Sung-ho materialized beside her, his form flickering slightly as he transitioned back from phase space. Like many of the new generation, he had undergone modifications that allowed him to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The process was irreversible and potentially fatal, but volunteers had never been lacking. The first squadron is ready for deployment, he reported. 47 ships, fully crewed by Void runners. Captain, Lena Young requests permission to begin final testing. Woo-jin nodded. Granted, but remind her that we cannot afford to lose even one vessel to experimentation. We will have exactly one chance to surprise them. Through the viewport, she watched as one of the new ships began to fade from existence. It did not move in any conventional sense. Instead, it simply ceased to be in this dimension and began to exist somewhere else. The transition was so smooth that the surrounding water did not even ripple. Admiral Shin had been 12 years old when her parents died, during the evacuation of New Seoul. She had spent the following 38 years preparing for this moment, transforming herself into something that could navigate the spaces between realities. Her body was more machine than flesh now, enhanced with technologies that would have been considered impossible by the humans who first reached for the stars. The aliens patrol on a predictable schedule, she said to Captain O. They have grown lazy in their certainty that we pose no threat. That overconfidence will be their downfall. A chime indicated an incoming transmission from the surface. Professor Hunyerin's image appeared on the display, her laboratory visible behind her. Strange geometric shapes floated in the air around her, pulsing with energies that existed partially outside normal space-time. "Admiral," Han said, her voice carrying the exhaustion of someone who had not slept in days. "The weapon is ready for integration. I must warn you again that the power requirements are enormous. Each shot will drain approximately 1/3 of our total energy reserves." "Understood," Wu Jin replied. "How many shots per ship?" 3, if we push the systems to their absolute limits. After that, the quantum tunneling matrix will collapse and the vessel will be trapped in normal space. Wu Jin considered this limitation. 3 shots per ship, 47 ships in the first wave. 141 chances to demonstrate to the galaxy what humanity had become during its 50 years of exile. It would have to be enough. "Integration begins immediately," she decided. "We launch in 72 hours. The transmission ended, leaving Wu Jin alone with her thoughts in the endless darkness of the deep ocean. Around her, technicians worked, with quiet efficiency, making final preparations for humanity's return to the galaxy. None of them spoke of their fears or doubts. Such emotions had been systematically eliminated from their personalities during the modification process. In another section of the facility, Captain Li Na-young ran her hands over the control surfaces of her ship's navigation system. The interface responded to her touch by shifting into configurations that would have driven unmodified humans insane. Her brain, enhanced with quantum processors, processed the multidimensional data streams with casual ease. "Running final systems check," she announced to her crew. Her pilot, Lieutenant Ryu Jae-sung, existed primarily in phase space now. His physical body was maintained in a life support pod, while his consciousness navigated the spaces between dimensions. He could perceive threats and obstacles that existed outside normal reality, making him invaluable for missions that required moving through impossible geometries. "Navigation systems optimal," Ryu reported, his voice carrying an odd harmonic that indicated he was speaking from multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Quantum tunnel generators are stable. Weapon systems show full charge." "Excellent," Na-young said. "Begin pre-flight sequence." The ship around them began to respond, but not in ways that conventional physics could explain. The hull became translucent, then invisible, as the vessel prepared to phase between realities. Energy flowed through conduits that existed in 11 different dimensions, powering systems that manipulated the fundamental forces of the universe. Na-young had volunteered for the modification process when she was 19 years old. The doctors had warned her that success was not guaranteed, that she might die screaming as her consciousness was torn apart and reassembled in configurations that could interface with higher dimensional space. She had accepted the risks without hesitation, driven by memories of stories her grandfather had told about the old days when humans trusted their alien neighbors. "All systems green," she announced, "beginning phase transition." Reality rippled around the ship as it slipped sideways through dimensions that had no names. For a moment, Na-young could perceive the entire galaxy spread out before her like a vast web of light and shadow. She saw the alien patrol routes, the defensive positions, the massive fleets that maintained the blockade around Earth. All of it was visible from her position in the spaces between spaces, and all of it was vulnerable to attack from directions that conventional sensors could not detect. The ship completed its transition and materialized in normal space near Earth's moon. The entire journey had taken less than 3 seconds, covering a distance that should have required hours even with the fastest conventional drives. "Phase jump successful," Na-young reported to Admiral Shin. "All systems nominal. We are ready for combat operations." Back in the underwater facility, Wu Jin received similar reports from all 47 ships in the first wave. Each vessel was crewed by humans who had undergone irreversible modifications, transforming themselves into something that could survive and fight in the hostile environment of higher dimensional space. They were no longer entirely human in any traditional sense, but they carried within them the concentrated hatred of a species that had been betrayed by those they trusted most. "Dr. Jong Kyung-min, please report to the command center," Wu Jin announced over the facility's communication system. Minutes later, a figure materialized in the center of the command room. Dr. Zhang existed primarily as a pattern of quantum information now, able to manifest physical form when necessary, but spending most of her time as pure consciousness distributed across multiple realities. She had volunteered for the most extreme modifications, becoming something that could manipulate space-time through pure thought. "Admiral," Zhang said, her voice echoing strangely as it originated from several dimensions simultaneously. "The broadcast system is ready. I can transmit simultaneously to every alien communication network in the galaxy. The message will be impossible to block or trace. And our presence will remain undetected until we choose to reveal ourselves." "Correct. The alien sensors are calibrated to detect matter and energy that exists in their familiar three-dimensional space. They have no instruments capable of perceiving our activities in the void between realities." Wu Jin nodded grimly. For 50 years, humanity had studied every aspect of alien technology and psychology. They knew exactly how their former friends thought, how they would react, what they feared most. The coming operation had been planned down to the smallest detail, accounting for every possible response the aliens might attempt. "Signal all units," she commanded. "Operation Requiem begins in 60 hours. Make final preparations." Throughout the hidden facility, humans who had sacrificed their humanity for the cause of vengeance made ready for war. They checked weapon systems that could punch holes through reality itself. They calibrated navigation equipment that could plot courses through dimensions that existed only in mathematical theory. They prepared for a battle that would rewrite the fundamental rules by which the galaxy operated. Above them, alien patrol ships continued their predictable routes, scanning for signs of human spaceflight capability. Their instruments detected nothing unusual. The energy signatures from Earth remained consistent with a civilization struggling to rebuild after devastating bombardment. The blockade had been successful for 5 decades without incident. The aliens had no way of knowing that beneath their very sensors, humanity had spent 50 years becoming something that existed beyond the reach of conventional detection. Soon, very soon, they would learn that their former victims had evolved into predators, unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. In the darkness between dimensions, the children of the void prepared to teach the universe a lesson it would never forget. Patrol Commander Vexhai had been monitoring Earth's orbital space for 12 years without incident. The massive Valthari dreadnought Eternal Vigil held position at the edge of Earth's solar system, its sensors constantly scanning for any sign that the contained humans might be attempting to rebuild their spacefaring capability. In 12 years, the most exciting event had been a small meteor that briefly triggered the proximity alarms. Today felt no different as Vexhai reviewed the morning sensor reports. Earth's electromagnetic output remained consistent with a pre-industrial civilization. No unusual radio transmissions, no energy signatures that might indicate spacecraft construction, no attempts to communicate with the outside galaxy. The humans had learned their lesson and accepted their place as a contained species. "Commander," his sensor operator called out, "I am detecting an anomaly in the quantum field matrix." Vexhai looked up from his reports with mild interest. "Specify." "The readings are unusual, sir. It appears that space-time itself is fluctuating in multiple sectors simultaneously, but there are no mass objects present that could cause such distortions." Before Vexhai could respond, every sensor display on the bridge suddenly went dark. Emergency lighting activated as backup systems struggled to compensate for the complete failure of the ship's primary detection arrays. In 50 years of maintaining the Earth blockade, nothing like this had ever happened. "Report," Vexhai demanded. "All sensor networks are offline," the operator replied, his voice tight with confusion. "Not damaged, sir. They appear to be receiving conflicting data from multiple sources. The computer systems cannot process the input. Switch to manual observation," Vexhai ordered. "Activate visual displays." The main screen flickered to life, showing the familiar vista of space around Earth. Stars glittered against the black, void exactly as they had for the past 50 years. Nothing appeared to have changed. Then the stars began to move. At first, Vexai thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. Individual points of light seemed to shift slightly, creating patterns that had not been there moments before. But as he watched, the movement became more pronounced. The stars were not moving randomly. They were forming shapes, geometric patterns, that spelled out words in a dozen different alien languages. "Hello?" the stars said in perfect Valthari script. Vexai felt his blood turn to ice. "Sound General Alert. Contact Fleet Command immediately." "Sir?" the communications officer reported. "I cannot establish contact with Fleet Command. Our transmissions are being redirected. They appear to be broadcasting back to us from impossible directions." On the display, the star pattern shifted again. "Did you miss us?" they asked in Nexari symbols. "Impossible," Vexai whispered. "No technology can manipulate stellar positions. Not even we possess such capabilities." His sensor operator suddenly screamed. The Valthari stumbled backward from his console, his mercury-like skin rippling with terror. "Commander, the sensors are showing ships, hundreds of them. They are materializing inside our defensive perimeter." Vexai rushed to the sensor station and stared at the readings in disbelief. The displays showed massive energy signatures appearing throughout local space, but not arriving from any direction. They were simply coming into existence, as if reality itself was being rewritten to include them. "That is impossible," he said. "Nothing can phase through our shields." "Sir?" the weapons officer called out. "I am detecting a massive energy buildup directly ahead. Something is manifesting in front of our main guns." On the visual display, space began to ripple like water. A shape emerged from the distortion, sleek and predatory, its hull seeming to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The vessel was unmistakably human in design, but transformed into something that hurt to look at directly. Captain Song Hanyul materialized on the bridge of the Eternal Vigil without triggering any alarms. She simply stepped from one dimension into another, appearing beside Vexai's command chair as if she had always been there. The Valthari commander spun toward her, his hand moving toward his sidearm, but froze when he saw her eyes. They were not human eyes anymore. They held depths that seemed to extend into dimensions that should not exist, and looking into them was like staring into the void between stars. Hanyul smiled, and the expression was colder than the space outside. "Hello, Vexai," she said, in perfect Valthari. "We need to talk." The commander's crew scrambled for their weapons, but Hanyul raised one hand, and they simply stopped moving. Not paralyzed, not stunned, but caught in a bubble of altered time where their movements became impossibly slow. 50 years ago, you and your allies taught us a valuable lesson, Hanyul continued conversationally. You showed us that friendship is weakness, that trust leads to betrayal, that mercy is a luxury we cannot afford. We have been excellent students. What do you want? Vexai managed to ask. Want, Hanyul laughed, and the sound made reality ripple around them. We want nothing from you. We are simply here to deliver a message. She gestured toward the main display, which now showed the space around Earth filled with ships that seemed to exist in multiple realities simultaneously. Hundreds of human vessels had materialized within the alien blockade, their presence undetected until they chose to reveal themselves. Your blockade has been monitoring Earth for 50 years, Hanyul said. You have been watching for signs that we might try to rebuild our spacefaring capability. You never considered that we might have already surpassed it entirely. Commander Ryu Jae-sung's voice echoed through the Eternal Vigil's communication system, though no transmission had been sent or received. All alien vessels in Earth's solar system, you have 30 seconds to begin withdrawal procedures. Any ship that remains after that deadline will be destroyed. You cannot threaten the entire galactic fleet, Vexai protested. There are thousands of ships maintaining the blockade. We're thousands of ships, Hanyul corrected. Check your long-range sensors. Vexai turned to his sensor operator, who had managed to restore partial function to the detection arrays. The Valthari's face went pale as he read the displays. Commander, I am reading massive explosions throughout the outer system. The patrol fleet stationed near Jupiter and Saturn appear to have been eliminated. Impossible. Those fleets consisted of over 300 vessels each. Not anymore, Hanul said cheerfully. Captain Li Na Young's squadron makes very efficient work of stationary targets, especially when she can attack from dimensions your shields cannot block. The display showed expanding debris fields where the outer patrol fleets had been positioned. Each explosion had lasted less than a second, suggesting that the attacks had been coordinated with inhuman precision. In the space of minutes, humanity had eliminated over 600 alien warships without sustaining any apparent losses. The deadline has passed, Ryu's voice announced, beginning termination sequence. The stars visible through the Eternal Vigil's viewports suddenly began to dim, not disappearing, but having their light drained away by something that existed in the spaces between normal reality. The effect spread outward like a wave, encompassing every alien vessel that had chosen to remain in Earth's solar system. "What are you doing?" Vexhai demanded. "Teaching," Hanul replied. "Your species believes that superior technology guarantees victory. You calculated our capabilities based on what you could observe and measure. You never considered what we might accomplish by abandoning the limitations of three-dimensional existence." The hull of the Eternal Vigil began to vibrate as forces beyond conventional physics acted upon its structure. Warning alarms blared as systems failed throughout the massive ship. Vexhai watched in horror as his vessel, one of the most advanced in the Valthari fleet, was systematically dismantled by energies that his instruments could not even detect. "Please," he begged. "We were only following orders." The Council determined that humanity posed a threat to galactic stability. "You were right," Hanul agreed. "We do pose a threat, but not the threat you imagined." She began to fade from normal reality, becoming translucent as she prepared to return to the void between dimensions. "Tell your council that the blockade is ended. Tell them that humanity remembers every ship you destroyed, every colony you burned, every life you took. Tell them that we have spent 50 years learning to become something they cannot fight, cannot understand, and cannot escape." The last thing Vexhai saw before his ship's complete destruction was Hanul's smile. It was the expression of a predator that had finally cornered prey that had been running for far too long. Throughout Earth's solar system, the remaining alien vessels met similar fates. Some were simply disintegrated by weapons that fired from impossible directions. Others found themselves trapped in gravity wells that compressed them to the size of atoms. A few were left intact but empty, their crews transported to locations that existed outside normal space-time. Within hours, 50 years of alien occupation had been swept away as if it had never existed. The blockade that had confined humanity to their homeworld was reduced to expanding clouds of debris and electromagnetic radiation. From hidden facilities across Earth, Dr. Zhang Kyungmin's consciousness reached out to touch every communication network in the galaxy simultaneously. Her message transmitted from dimensions that alien technology could not imitate. The Nexari homeworld of Cythera had known peace for over 3,000 years. Its purple seas lapped gently against crystalline shores while billions of tentacled beings went about their daily lives, secure in the knowledge that their advanced civilization could handle any threat the galaxy might present. The planet's defensive systems were among the most sophisticated ever developed, capable of detecting and destroying any vessel that approached with hostile intent. None of those systems registered any alarm when their sun began to flicker. Prime scholar Zethara noticed it first during her morning observations. The star that had burned steadily for billions of years was pulsing with irregular fluctuations, its output varying in ways that defied every known law of stellar physics. She immediately contacted the planetary observatory, assuming there must be some error in her instruments. "Confirmed, Prime Scholar," the observatory director reported. "Our sun is experiencing energy drain at an unprecedented rate. Something is extracting approximately 12% of its total output and redirecting that energy elsewhere." Zethara felt her tentacles writhe with anxiety. "That is impossible. No technology in the galaxy can manipulate stellar fusion on such a scale. No known technology," the director corrected grimly. "But the energy loss is accelerating. If this continues, our sun will begin to cool within days." Across the galaxy, similar reports flooded communication networks. The Corvani homeworld reported that their binary star system was experiencing coordinated energy extraction. Valthari colonies found their suns dimming as vast amounts of stellar matter was somehow harvested by invisible mechanisms. Even the most heavily defended worlds watched helplessly as their stars were systematically drained of power. On the bridge of the human vessel Retribution, Marshal Kang Yoon-soo monitored the energy collection process with cold satisfaction. Her ship existed primarily in the 11th dimension, invisible to conventional sensors, while her crew operated harvesting equipment that reached across space-time to tap directly into stellar cores. "Report," she commanded. Commander Lim Hyun-woo materialized beside her. His consciousness transmitted from the engineering sections that existed in multiple realities simultaneously. "Energy collection proceeding ahead of schedule, Marshal. We have harvested sufficient power from 47 star systems to begin the final phase of Operation Requiem. Casualties among the target populations? Minimal so far," Lim replied. "The stellar cooling process will take several weeks to affect planetary climates. Most civilians remain unaware of what is happening." "Good," Kang said coldly. "Fear is most effective when it builds slowly. Let them realize gradually that their suns are dying, and there is nothing they can do to prevent it." Through her ship's interdimensional sensors, she could observe the panic spreading through alien command centers as their scientists struggled to understand what was happening. The galaxy's greatest minds were working desperately to find some explanation for the simultaneous stellar manipulation, but they were thinking in terms of conventional physics and three-dimensional space. They could not conceive of weapons that operated from the void between realities. "Marshal," her communications officer announced, "we are receiving surrender offers from 7 different species. They are requesting terms for ending hostilities." "Ignore them," Kang replied without hesitation. "There will be no negotiations, no terms, no mercy. They had 50 years to consider the consequences of their actions. The time for choosing sides has passed." In another part of the galaxy, Captain Ju Min-jun led a strike team through the dimensional barriers that separated normal space from the realm of pure thought. His mission was different from the stellar harvesting operations. While other human forces attacked infrastructure and resources, his team targeted something far more valuable: hope itself. The Corvani capital world of Krexhan possessed defenses that could theoretically repel any conventional invasion. Orbital battle stations, planetary shields, atmospheric defense grids, and underground command bunkers created multiple layers of protection. None of these defenses could prevent enemies that approached through dimensions that existed only in the spaces between thoughts. Min-jun and his team materialized inside the Grand Assembly Hall during an emergency session of the Corvani leadership. The 4-armed aliens scrambled for weapons but found themselves unable to move as human soldiers emerged from impossible angles, stepping through walls and floors as if they were made of air. "Honorable counselors," Min-jun said politely, speaking perfect Corvani, "please remain calm. We are not here to harm you physically." General Thraxon, commander of Corvani military forces, managed to overcome his paralysis long enough to speak. "What do you want, human?" "Want?" Min-jun appeared to consider the question seriously. "We want you to understand what you took from us 50 years ago. You destroyed our colonies, killed our families, shattered our dreams of peaceful coexistence among the stars. Now we will show you what loss truly means." He gestured toward the great display screens that dominated the assembly hall. The images that appeared showed Corvani colonies throughout the galaxy, but something was wrong with each scene. The colonists moved in strange, repetitive patterns. Their eyes were vacant, unfocused. They went through the motions of their daily lives, but with no apparent awareness or purpose. "What have you done to them?" Thraxon demanded. "We have given them the gift of forgetting," Min-jun explained calmly. "Your people no longer remember why they exist, what they are working toward, or what they have lost. They feel no pain, no fear, no hope, no ambition. They are perfectly content to exist without purpose until they die of old age." The Corvani leaders stared in horror at the screens showing millions of their people reduced to mindless automatons. The colonists continued their daily routines, but with the mechanical precision of machines, rather than the conscious choices of living beings. "This is monstrous," one of the counselors whispered. "Is it?" Min Jun asked. "You found our rapid advancement threatening, so you decided to reduce us to a pre-industrial state. We found your capacity for hope threatening, so we removed it. The methods are different, but the principle is identical." His team began to fade back into the dimensions between thoughts, their mission complete. Before disappearing entirely, Min Jun delivered his final message to the Corvani leadership. "We will not kill you," he said. "Death would be too merciful. Instead, you will live to watch as everything your civilization has built crumbles around you. Your people will forget why they ever reached for the stars. Your colonies will fade into purposeless existence. Your legacy will be erased not through destruction, but through the simple absence of anyone who remembers why it mattered." The human strike team vanished completely, leaving the Corvani leaders alone with the horrifying images of their mindless colonies. Outside the assembly hall, the capital city continued functioning normally, but already some citizens were beginning to show the same vacant expressions. The effect was spreading like a virus, transmitted through some mechanism that Corvani science could not detect or counter. On Valthar Prime, the crystalline capital of the Valthari Empire, Emperor Zalthex watched helplessly as his sun dimmed hour by hour. The great towers that had stood for millennia began to lose their lustrous glow as the reduced stellar energy affected the quantum crystals that formed the foundation of Valthari technology. "How many systems have we lost contact with?" he asked his advisors. 43% of our colonies have gone silent, Majesty," General Vexitar reported. "The remaining systems report either stellar manipulation or psychological attacks against their populations. Our fleets have been unable to locate or engage the human forces." "How is that possible? Humans are a single-world species with primitive technology." "We're a single-world species, Majesty," the general corrected grimly. "Intelligence reports suggest they have been secretly developing capabilities far beyond our understanding for the past 50 years. They appear to have abandoned conventional physics entirely." Emperor Zalthex moved to the great window that overlooked his capital city. Below, millions of Valthari citizens went about their daily lives, unaware that their civilization was being systematically dismantled by enemies they could not see or fight. The empire that had dominated local space for thousands of years was crumbling in a matter of days. "Can we negotiate?" he asked quietly. "We have tried, Majesty. The humans do not respond to any diplomatic overtures. They seem entirely focused on some form of systematic revenge." A new voice spoke from behind them, causing both Valthari to spin in alarm. A human figure stood in the center of the room, having appeared without triggering any security systems or opening any doors. "Your Majesty," the human said with a polite bow. "I am Captain Park Hyun-soo. I bring greetings from the children of Earth." Guards rushed into the room, but their weapons passed harmlessly through the human's body. Park appeared to exist in normal space, but matter could not interact with him in any meaningful way. "What do you want?" Emperor Zalthex demanded. "To deliver a message," Park replied. 50 years ago, your empire participated in the systematic destruction of human civilization. You justified this action by claiming we posed a threat to galactic stability. Today, we want you to understand that you were absolutely correct. At the center of the galaxy, where space-time was already twisted by the massive black hole that anchored their spiral arm, Admiral Park Tae-ho stood before the most ambitious construction project in human history. The Nexus engine stretched across millions of kilometers, its components existing in 17 different dimensions simultaneously. For 5 years, human engineers had worked in secret to build something that would serve as both weapon and monument to their species' transformation. "Final systems check," Park commanded, his voice carrying across communication networks that spanned multiple realities. Dr. Seo Min-jung, her consciousness distributed across the engine's quantum processors, responded from her integration chamber. "All dimensional anchors are stable. The reality matrix is holding at 97% coherence. We are ready to begin the ignition sequence. Park nodded grimly. The engine represented the culmination of 50 years of human advancement, a device that could manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe on a galactic scale. Its purpose was not destruction in any conventional sense, but something far more profound and permanent. Initiate stellar synthesis, he ordered. Throughout the galaxy, the stars that human forces had been harvesting suddenly flared with renewed brightness. But this was not their natural fusion returning. Instead, the collected stellar matter began to flow through dimensional conduits toward the galactic center, guided by technologies that treated space-time like a fluid that could be shaped by will alone. On the Valthari homeworld, Emperor Zalthex watched in amazement as his dying sun suddenly blazed with new intensity. For a moment, hope flickered in his crystalline heart. Perhaps the humans had shown mercy after all, returning the stolen energy to restore his empire's power. That hope died as he realized the energy was not staying. The renewed stellar output was being channeled away, drawn into streams of pure force that flowed toward the galactic center like rivers of light. His sun was not being restored. It was being transformed into a component of something vast and terrible. In the void at the galaxy's heart, the collected energy of 10,000 stars began to take shape under human guidance. The matter did not collapse into a conventional star or black hole. Instead, it formed patterns that existed in dimensions beyond normal space, creating a structure that burned with light that carried meaning as well as energy. General Seo Jun-ki monitored the process from his command ship, watching as humanity's artificial sun took form according to principles that would have driven pre-modification humans insane. Temperature is stabilizing at target levels, he reported. The light spectrum is encoding properly. All alien populations within the galactic disk will be exposed to the transmission within 72 hours. The new star's light was unlike anything that had ever existed naturally. It carried information encoded at the quantum level, patterns that would interact with the genetic structure of every species that had participated in humanity's betrayal. But this was not a weapon designed to kill. Death would have been too merciful for what humanity had planned on Nixari Prime. Prime scholar Zathara was among the first to notice the effects as the artificial sun's light reached her world. The radiation seemed harmless at first, producing no immediate symptoms or visible changes. But within hours, she began to notice subtle alterations in her thoughts and perceptions. Her memories of the human genocide became clearer, more detailed, impossible to suppress or rationalize away. She could recall with perfect clarity every moment of the council session, where humanity's fate had been decided. She remembered her own voice voting for their destruction, her relief when the threat was supposedly eliminated, her satisfaction at a job well done. But now those memories carried a crushing weight of guilt and horror that she had never felt before. The modification to her genetic structure had awakened parts of her brain that her species had never developed. Neural pathways that processed concepts like empathy and moral responsibility with overwhelming intensity across her homeworld. Similar changes were taking place. The Nixari had evolved as a cold analytical species that made decisions based purely on logical outcomes. They had participated in humanity's near extinction because it seemed like the rational choice for galactic stability. Now, for the first time in their evolutionary history, they were experiencing genuine remorse. The artificial sun's influence spread outward in waves, affecting every world that had supported the betrayal. Valthari citizens found themselves overwhelmed by emotions they had no words to describe as they comprehended the magnitude of what their empire had done. Corvani warriors, bred for aggression and conquest, collapsed under the weight of understanding how their actions had felt to their victims. Captain No Yai Jin stood on the observation deck of humanity's flagship as the new star's light reached the outer edges of the galaxy. Around her, other human officers watched the process with expressions of cold satisfaction. They had waited 50 years for this moment, and it was everything they had hoped it would be. Status report on the affected populations, she requested. Mass psychological breakdown is occurring across all target species, her intelligence officer replied. Suicide rates have increased by 4,000%. Birth rates have dropped to near zero as individuals become unable to justify bringing new life into existence. Most governments have ceased functioning as their leaders become paralyzed by guilt. Excellent, No said without emotion. Begin Phase 4. Throughout human space, vast transport ships began to move. These vessels had been constructed specifically for the final phase of Operation Requiem, designed to carry millions of beings safely across interstellar distances, but they were not intended for human passengers. The surviving alien populations, broken by the artificial sun's psychological effects, offered no resistance as human forces began gathering them for relocation. Entire species were loaded onto the transport ships like refugees fleeing a disaster, which in many ways they were. The disaster was their own awakening to the moral consequences of their actions. General Quan In-Wu oversaw the relocation process from the former Valthari capital. The crystalline city that had once housed billions now stood nearly empty, its remaining inhabitants huddled in designated collection points awaiting transport to their new homes. "Where are you taking us?" Emperor Zalthex asked as he was led, aboard one of the human ships. "To worlds where you can be properly cared for," Quan replied with false kindness. "You are clearly incapable of governing yourselves responsibly. From now on, humanity will handle such burdens for you." The reservation. Worlds were Earth-like planets that human terraforming had prepared specifically for this purpose. They were beautiful, peaceful places with gentle climates and abundant resources. Everything the relocated aliens would need to live comfortable lives had been provided. Everything except freedom, dignity, and the right to make their own choices. As the transport ships departed for the reservation worlds, human expansion fleets moved in the opposite direction. The empty planets left behind by the relocated species were perfect for human colonization, their infrastructure intact, and their resources ready for exploitation. Dr. Zhong Kyung-min, her consciousness now permanently distributed across the galactic communication network, addressed the universe one final time. "The relocation process is complete," her voice announced to every inhabited world. "The species that participated in humanity's betrayal have been moved to protected worlds where they will be safe from the consequences of their poor decision-making. We will care for them as they once cared for us. They need not worry about the burden of self-governance ever again." On the reservation world designated as New Valthar, Emperor Zalthex stood at the edge of a compound that housed his entire surviving population. The world was beautiful, the facilities comfortable, the human guards polite and helpful, but the high-energy barriers that surrounded the compound made it clear that this was a prison, no matter how pleasant its appearance. Human administrators provided everything the Valthari needed: food, shelter, medical care, entertainment, education, for their children. But they made all the decisions about what was provided, when, and how. The former masters of a galactic empire had become pets in a very comfortable cage. Similar scenes played out across dozens of reservation worlds as the galaxy's former great powers adjusted to their new status. The Nexari, once renowned for their scientific achievements, were given simple tasks to keep their minds occupied. The Corvani, former conquerors of star systems, were assigned gardening duties and craft projects. None of them were mistreated, in any conventional sense. They were fed, housed, protected from disease and natural disasters. Their human caretakers were unfailingly polite and efficient. But they were never again allowed to make meaningful choices about their own lives or futures. In the space that had once held their civilizations, humanity expanded with the methodical efficiency of a species that had learned to think in terms of millennia rather than mere centuries. Human colonies spread across thousands of worlds, each one more advanced than the last, as the species continued its relentless evolution. The artificial sun at the galaxy's center burned eternal, its light serving as both power source and reminder. Any species that gazed upon it would remember what happened to those who betrayed humanity's trust.